Hey, today I want to tie a Stonefly Nymph with you. It's going to be a wire-bodied two-tone nymph. I've got a size 12 Stonefly hook and a charcoal metal bead, and I've put a little non-lead wire behind the bead, not so much for the weight because we have a fair amount of weight with the wire and the bead, but really just kind of keep that bead in place. I've got some 8/0 black uni, so I'm going to tie in right behind that wire. And I started with a series called the Basics, geared specifically for the novice tyer. If you saw any of those videos, they go very slow and I really take my time. These are going to be much faster videos than that series. So I'm just covering up some of that wire, and I'll stop my thread about the halfway point. Got some nice gold copperish flexi floss that I like to use for legs and tails. I find it's a lot more durable than silly legs. We'll just kind of wrap that around the thread, and then what I like to do is I pull it as I wrap over it. I pull it toward me, and then when I let go, those fibers will flare out. Run my thread to just about the start of the bend of the hook. Wrap that down a little bit. I'm using 8/0 black uni. Can certainly tie this with 6/0. I just like to use the 8, particularly when I get up to the head. It leaves a much smaller collar of thread. So I've got a medium-sized ultra wire here. It's called Wine, and I'm going to tie this with this wine color and another medium-sized ultra wire called Hot Yellow. I've had a lot of success with this pattern, and I'm just going to even up the tips. These two pieces of wire, and I'm going to put those tips right about that halfway mark on the shank of the hook, and then tie them in, and this will give us a nice consistent, even, smooth underbody. And it's good if you can keep your wraps touching. Not quite as critical with this gauge wire, but in some of the smaller wires, and I do tie this fly fairly small, it becomes a lot more important because those smaller gauge wires will be a lot more sensitive to any gaps and bumps. And we'll just take this wire, start wrapping it forward, create a nice little abdomen for ourselves here. And I'm going to put one more wrap in there. I'm going to tie this wire off, thread over the top and in front. Once that's good and tied off, secure, you can helicopter off these pieces. 1, don't need that. 2, goodbye. Now you can tie the abdomen in a number of different colors. Lots of different wires out there you can use. And you can also tie the thorax in a bunch of different colors. I'm going to use a sort of a tan color here, but I also tie it dark brown, black, gray. I'm just going to dub a ball of dubbing here. What that's going to do is creates a transition between our thorax or abdomen and thorax, but it also is going to lift our wing case so that it doesn't rest right on our abdomen. Once I've got the ball that I want, I've prepped some feathers here. This is a hen feather that I coat with one layer of head cement first, and then I put a little UV finish over it. Now if you look at the insect, the first wing case overlaps the abdomen. A lot of patterns don't necessarily represent that accurately, but if you look at the insect, that is accurate. So I've got that wing case tied in, and come back to my flexi floss. Now for this back pair of legs, I like to tie this set in individually. And I usually tie them in a little bit longer than I think I'm going to want them, and then I'll come back and trim them later. So I'm going to tie one in on my side and then one on the far side. Come back to my dubbing. Using a synthetic here. It's got a little bit of sparkle. I don't remember, but most likely I mixed it. I just shoot for the color and whatever effect I want. So that's up to you. And I usually put a fairly good ball of dubbing down this next segment, like so. Come back to little wing case feathers that are prepped. That's what they look like. They have that nice little split down the middle. Looks kind of cool. Makes the fly look sharp. And gives that somewhat mottled patterned effect of the natural. So we'll tie that in, trim out these ends. Now the reason I tie the wing case in first is if you tie it in after the legs, what it does is it pushes down on those legs and it can change the set that you want. So I tie the wing case in first and then the legs. Now for this next set of legs, I'm going to tie these in one piece for the front and the middle. So I take a longer piece of this flexi floss, tie one in on my side, tie one in on the far side, other side. Looks good. Back to my dubbing, and we'll dub our last segment for the thorax here. I usually dub that right up to the bead. Now I'll come back to my wing case, my last one, lay this right on top, and I usually set them so that they overlap one another slightly, and I'll tie this in I'm just going to flip back this waist piece, get some thread in front of this feather so we know that we've locked it in there. A few wraps of thread in front, come back over the top, take my scissors, whoops, hit the coffee cup, trim this waist out, it's pretty good. Now I'm just going to finish up by tying over some of those butt ends that are left. Shouldn't be too many. Legs look good where I want them. Grab my whip finish tool. I'm actually going to trim these a little bit short now so they don't get in the way as we finish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give that a good whip finish. Trim out our thread. Alright, so now just want to trim these legs a little bit. And the front are the shortest, the middle are the next shortest, and the back are the longest. So just kind of eyeball it. It's pretty good. Yep. Trim out our tail. Looks good. Front legs look good. This is just a touch long. Alright, so we're almost done. This is optional, but I think it adds a lot of life to the fly. I'm going to take a black marker, mark up these legs a little bit, and I think you'll see that it really kind of changes the character of the fly. Because we're going to use this black, but then we're going to come in with brown too. So we'll have these tri-colored legs when we're done, and tail. And I think it really brings the fly to life. The other nice thing about these permanent markers on this flexi floss is I found that the marking, even after a fair amount of fishing, although it bleeds a little bit, it stays fairly permanent. I don't like the silly legs that you can buy because they tend to be fairly brittle in comparison, and they break off either in the fish's mouth, or a lot of times if you're tying the fly on, tying a dropper, they just break off in your hand. This flexi floss is super durable stuff. So now I'm just coming in with some brown. Again, purely optional, but I think it adds a lot to the look of the fly. And I've had a lot of success with this pattern on the Rogue, on the McLeod, on the Sacramento, on the Merced, the Tuolumne, Stanislaus, Feather, an American. It's a really good producer. Gets down really well. Just going to finish marking up this tail. And we're done. We're going to put a little head cement on our thread, and then it'll be ready for the box. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. And I hope you go out and fish this pattern. And let me know if you like it, if it's proved successful for you. It's going to get down pretty fast, which is good. And using different gauge wire, you can tie this fairly small. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them, and I'll be making some more videos, so I hope to catch you there. Thanks. Bye.